I'm a little late to the conversation, but can we talk about Luigi? No, not that one, I mean the sexy one. Because I feel like I'm going insane here. I'm not the only one that thinks this is the most boring game Nintendo released this year. That's not what I'm talking about in this video. I'm talking about Mario & Luigi, which is probably the second most boring game Nintendo released this year, but that didn't make for as interesting of a title. Somewhat more baffling, however, because how do you screw up a Mario & Luigi game? Well, I'll tell you how. In November, Nintendo released a new entry into the Mario & Luigi series to generally favorable reviews. I mean, it got a high 7 on Metacritic, despite the fact that a lot of places did rate this game pretty low. I mean, GameSpot and Destructoid gave it a 6 out of 10, and then IGN, with one of the lowest reviews for this game, slapping it with a mid 5 out of 10.
The Mario & Luigi series has sadly missed the boat.
The only reason it managed to crawl its way out of the gutter is the absolute slew of places that rated it a 9. A near perfect 9. This, I mean, no offense, I don't think it's the worst thing ever made, but there's almost nowhere else to go, in these reviewers' opinion, than a perfect experience. It was so close, it just missed the mark. I feel like 9 out of 10s are thrown out there way too carelessly these days. A 9 out of 10 should be reserved for a near perfect experience. I don't even know what quantifies a 10. I don't know if we've ever even had a perfect video game made. Well, apparently Mario & Luigi Brothership is very close, and for this reviewer, it was a perfect experience. Nothing needed to be changed. Nothing could be done any different. 100. Can we at least agree that's a bit insane? Although, to be fair, this reviewer seems to only really deal in perfect hundreds, including Scarlet and Violet. But Super Mario RPG got a 60, so now I don't know what to think. Mario & Luigi Brothership is riddled with performance issues. It suffers from insanely slow pacing, a forgettable story with non-memorable characters, and a pretty decent combat system that I wouldn't say even comes close to other games in this genre, let alone other Mario games in this genre. And even if all of my opinion-based stuff is stripped out of here and we just focused on the sheer amount of performance issues the game suffers from, is it really a 9 out of 10? Or is it just that that same slew of 9s came almost exclusively from outlets with Nintendo in the name? I ain't saying nothing. And why is it IGN's 5 out of 10 score got mocked by dozens of other reviewers online days before the game even released and people got to play it themselves? Scoring systems are kind of bizarre. My 7 is somebody's 9 and somebody else's 2 is someone else's 5. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And don't get me started on the fact that some places rate things out of 5, some places out of 10, and then some places is out of 100. As I was playing through myself, or should I say, and I'm sorry, struggling to find the motivation to keep playing through myself, I just didn't know what these people saw, other than maybe just a respect for the series and just so thankfully, lovingly glad that the series wasn't given up on and we had another entry in the franchise, despite how the game turned out. And in my opinion, it turned out kind of a mess. They did a whole developer interview. I'm surprised they even published it because I feel like through the whole interview, the creators of the game were trying to excuse so many flaws the game had while screaming in between the lines. Let's take a look at that and Mario & Luigi Brothership as a whole. Before we begin, I want to talk about the developer Acquire, because this is the first Mario & Luigi game not developed by Alpha Dream. It was directed by Haruyuki Ohashi, who has been credited with a special thanks on many games, but there was only ever one other game he personally directed: Aegis of Earth Protonovus Assault on PlayStation 3. I had to read that, there's no way I'm remembering it. And wouldn't you know, that game received a 57 on Metacritic. Or his other game was a 5 out of 10. Alpha Dream, the series' original developer, sadly went bankrupt due to the declining sales of the Mario & Luigi games, which were the main things that they did. They cited high development costs and an inability to adapt to the changing gaming market. They just got a bit stale, and they failed to innovate outside of previous entries in the series. So after Alpha Dream shut down, a lot of the people that worked there moved to Acquire, and Nintendo, for a long time, thought about giving up on Mario & Luigi. RPG, which would have been a shame. But they ended up contacting Acquire to develop the new game, which makes sense because Acquire already had people on the team that worked on previous Mario and Luigi games, and also they had great success working on Octopath Traveler for the Switch. But from the start, there were a ton of issues with the development, with the art director of the game saying he wanted to create a more unique and rugged style of Mario game, but Nintendo shut that down and told him to keep in line with the series' normal style. So right from the start, there was already an element of creativity being stifled with the development of the game. And I mean, look at the concept art. This is just rough. This isn't like final. This was shut down very quickly. This idea of a more rugged Mario with like a cape and looking kind of bad. I mean, this is giving me like Mario RPG vibes. Ohashi said, and I quote, "We had a strong desire to experiment with the new visual style, but they articulated their vision to us each time in a way that we found convincing." Which is such a shame, because what we got, it is very in line with classic Mario and Luigi games. But these concepts of a rough around the edges Mario excite me way more. It kind of gives me Chrono Trigger vibes, which makes sense as these Mario and Luigi games started with Super Mario RPG, which was developed by Square. And a lot of former Square employees went on to create Alpha Dream, including the director of Super Mario RPG, who is actually at Acquire and worked on Brothership. So you could see what the thinking was there, that they wanted to bring it back to its roots and do a more rugged, rough around the edges RPG, but they were told not to do that and instead do exactly what they had been doing before with the series. The series, by the way, that made the developers go bankrupt because it failed to innovate. They even suggested to Nintendo that they could make the game in that 2D HD art style that Octopath Traveler was in, since that was part of the reason why Nintendo wanted them to make this game in the first place, and that could work really well with the old style of Mario and Luigi games. But also, imagine a Mario game in a 2D HD art style. That would be sick. But of course, Nintendo vetoed that too. It was clear that they had a vision and they immediately had to pivot that vision to make something else. But I do wonder now, reflectively, if all parties involved still think that was the right choice to make. Because while sales numbers aren't everything, Brothership sales are down 50% from Thousand Year Door remake that released earlier this year. And even worse, down 80% from the Super Mario RPG game. And again, sales numbers aren't everything. Great games sell poorly all the time. One of my favorites is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. But I do wonder who this game is marketed for, because the cover art just has these two cartoon brothers and a little cute pig, which kind of just looks like a kid's game to me. But it's part of a series that started so long ago that it could legally be of drinking age now. So are they trying to appeal to kids, or are they trying to appeal to the adults that grew up with the franchise? I think they accidentally did neither. To be fair to the art style, it is very nice. It's clean, it's vibrant, it's bright, and it pops, even if it isn't super creative or innovative or doing anything different. But I find it so funny that this art style that they were dead set on going with is the reason why the game has such terrible performance issues. In that same developer interview, they said the thick lines around the characters were so taxing on the Switch's CPU that it made it a nightmare to work with. I can't even imagine how much time was wasted in development just trying to get this art style to run halfway decent on the console. And I can't say they succeeded, because the game is riddled with performance issues, and then towards the end of the game, it gets so much worse. I hope you guys really like these thick black lines, because they essentially act as speed humps on your way to the credits. In a somewhat short interview, they're already trying to explain that, hey, the art style isn't what we wanted, and this is why we had performance issues. Strangely, Acquire's approach to game development was quite different to Alpha Dream's, because director Ohashi's main goal was to focus on the island drifting mechanic that the game features. And to do that, he contracted out the story development to an external team. That's not normal, is it? Like, if I was directing a game, an RPG, a JRPG game where a story is so important, I would want to make sure I had full control over the writing process and that my story flowed hand in hand with the game that I was creating and was interesting to prevent the possibility of having bland characters or a bloated, lackluster story. Oops. The story of a role-playing game is so important because most of the time, it's what's pushing you through wanting to actually play the game. To go through these repetitive turn-based battles again and again and again and again, you need motivation. So to part the entire story development out to another team is a huge risk. And unfortunately, that risk, in my opinion, did not pay off. None of these characters are memorable at all. And the dialogue is so generically cookie cutter with barely any pulse or signs of life. And it's all just very much to the point, basic dialogue. I mean, you look at most other great JRPGs like Final Fantasy IX, Earthbound, even Mario RPG. And you look at the dialogue from these characters and you can almost get a sense of that character's personality, whether it's that character's accent or their personality quirks. Brothership seems scared to give any character personality, and it leads them to all feeling like one joint hive mind of a character. In fact, the only character in the game with some sort of personality is just the pig that follows you around, and his whole personality is that he doesn't like being called a pig, and he will say that over and over and over and over again until the end of the game. That's his one thing, but at least it does make him a little bit different. And I think all these issues could either be from them externally contracting out the story and leading towards that disconnect, or maybe a legitimate fear to express any kind of creativity, even in the characters, because they've already been told not to. I think it's clear that I did not care for the story, and I found myself zoning out or even skipping large chunks of dialogue just hours into the game. So let's move on from that and focus on the actual gameplay. While in previous games, you were able to control Luigi, they instead decided this time to sacrifice that mechanic and replace it with Luigi logic. These are moments where Luigi would have unique ideas on how to interact with the game world. I'm really not sure why one couldn't exist without the other. There's no reason why they both can't coexist. And these Luigi logic moments, they're not satisfying to the player at all. It's just a point of the game in the story where Luigi just has an idea and then that gives you a new gameplay mechanic. Sometimes, because sometimes, like the first time he does it, his idea is that he's just going to squeeze through some bars and then press a trigger on the other side. And that doesn't really ever happen again, so it's just sort of a cutscene. Cool. I didn't do anything. I watched it happen. Or this Luigi logic moment where Luigi, not the developers, definitely Luigi, the character in this game, has an idea where him and Mario can spin together really quickly, create a UFO to cover short distance gaps. And you just do that. The discovery of these mechanics through Luigi have nothing to do with the player other than just progressing through the game. So they don't add any satisfaction I would have felt if I had actually thought of something myself to solve the puzzle. And removing control of Luigi directly limits creative puzzle opportunities. Bafflingly, they still decided to add in puzzles and platforming around the islands. I ask you again, huh? Like these floating platforms where one is for Mario and one is for Luigi. But Luigi's automated, so he jumps on his own. So all you have to do is wait for the red square and jump on that one. And it's definitely not something that I feel satisfied after solving. Here's another puzzle where you have to move the brothers in order of the numbers. However, for some reason, Luigi can't count. So he'll immediately run to his next number, whether or not you've moved to your next number. I get absolutely no satisfaction out of solving these puzzles because they're half solved for you. I just want to double check something. Oh yeah, this game is titled Mario and Luigi, not Mario with Luigi. I thought that was the whole point of this series, is that for the first time you get to play with both Mario and Luigi. Now it just feels like one giant escort mission with an automatic ally that can help you out with some things, but he's not actually a main character in the game anymore. Once again, putting focus just solely on Mario and treating him like the sole hero. A reason why people love this series is because it gives Luigi the love that he deserves. But I mean, he is there the whole time, so that's something. I want to stress that in a game where its story is centered all around connections, they severed one of the biggest connections in this series gameplay. The connection between Mario and Luigi. That's not ironic to anybody else. I did really enjoy the sailing idea, but it became pretty apparent very quickly that all you do is just pick a path and then the game automatically sails you around that path in a loop. I guess everything else is taken care of for me. I don't even have to move half of the characters. Even the ship is moving itself around. All I can do really is fight. Fight. And I gotta say, to be fair, the battling does innovate, and it is the best part of the game. But I still don't think the battling is anywhere near perfect. It's just pretty good. And you would hope so, considering it's seemingly the one thing they worked on while they contracted out everything else. From all the new special attacks to the battle plugs, which power you up and you can mix and match different abilities, all of that is good. The issue is the repetitiveness of the battles is not good. There is, in my opinion, a lack of enemy types, and it all leads to a slog of just doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over, and I'll hit you with one more and over again. Just for an example, the first 3 to 4 hours of this game, there is only a few enemy types introduced. This game makes you wait like 4 hours before you finally have a boss battle, something different from the 3 to 4 enemies you've been fighting the whole time, and it's just a bigger version of one of the other enemies. Brothership makes you wait almost 2 full Lord of the Rings movies before they throw an enemy at you that doesn't just walk towards you slowly. I was only 4 or 5 hours into this RPG at this point, and I was already wanting to skip battles because I did not want to deal with the hassle. But I couldn't skip them because of the fear of becoming underleveled. And there's a surprising amount of backtracking throughout this entire game, but even early on, with the first 3 or 4 islands immediately sending you back through to do side quests, which are usually just fetch quests, I could keep going with breaking down this game and comparing it to Thousand Year Door, for example. I mean, 5 or 6 hours into Mario Brothership, they finally introduce a new enemy type with Spiky. And while it is a refreshingly new enemy to get at this point in the game, in the first hour alone of Thousand Year Door, dozens of different regular enemy types, as well as that opening mini boss battle, a boss battle against Gus, the doorkeeper, a giant boss battle with a blooper, and then even like a weird game show battle with a thwomp block. Literally in the first hour of the game. To cut to the chase, Mario and Luigi Brothership is a 40-hour long game that has about 35 to 40 unique enemies after removing any variations of the same enemy, which that equates to finding like 1 new enemy every hour or so of gameplay. Thousand Year Door is only 25 to 30 hours long and has 50 unique enemy types, removing all those same variations, which is a new enemy every 30 minutes of the game, which doesn't leave much time for anything to get stale. And that would be if I was even telling the truth, because it's actually 70 unique enemy types in Thousand Year Door. And if you want to add back in those variations, by the way, it's 121 enemy types in 25 hours. I am getting madder and madder the more I talk about this. I did not think I cared this much about the game. To summarize the combat, other than a few special attacks and adding battle plug modifiers to your regular attacks, you only have your regular attacks, the jumping on heads and the hammer. Just this and this for 40 hours. Jump, jump, whack, whack. The only reason I pushed through playing this game is because the more I played it, the more disappointed I became and the more I wanted to make this video. Ultimately, once I finished the game, I decided not to make the video because I had literally nothing good to say, and I also saw no one really even talking about the game. So I didn't think anyone would even care. But the more I thought about how mid this game is, the more it bothered me thinking about the reception the game had, people giving it near perfect scores, and then even people clowning on a 5 out of 10 IGN review. I looked at who did the Brothership review, and it was a guy named Logan Plant. And I started looking through his other reviews that he had done. This year alone, he gave games like 1,000 Year Door a 9, Endless Ocean Luminous a 4. In fact, the more I looked down all of his reviews, this Logan guy, he seems to be on it. I can't believe how clowned on his 5 out of 10 was, when I honestly feel like it's one of the only actual legitimate reviews from a fan of the series that wasn't afraid to give it the score that he felt like it deserved. If only I had a way of like communicating with him or talking with him about it.
Wood, I'm right here to talk about Brothership.
Sorry, how Logan? How did you get my Discord?
You emailed me, bro.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I did do that. Okay, well, while you're here, let's talk. First, I wanted to ask you, what other Nintendo games have you reviewed for IGN? Maybe like recently, like this year, maybe.
Yeah, I reviewed a lot of Nintendo games for IGN this year. I reviewed Super Mario Party Jamboree, Another Code Recollection, the Splatoon 3 Side Order DLC, and a handful of others like Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, Endless Ocean, which is the lowest score that I gave out this year.
Do you remember what you gave Endless Ocean?
I give it a 4 out of 10, which means bad on the IGN scale.
Yeah. So, how was that one received? Did you get any backlash about that?
No, I didn't. And generally reception on that one was pretty negative, so mine didn't stick out quite as much as some people thought the Brothership one did.
What did you give Jamboree? I don't know that one.
A 9 also.
Yeah,
I think
I'm with you on the Jamboree.
It's the best Mario Party ever, man. Jamboree is so good.
Yes, I agree. And I said the same thing in my video. What were your expectations for Mario and Luigi Brothership going in? And how did the game meet or deviate from those expectations?
Yeah, it's interesting because it had been so long since the last Mario and Luigi game, and I have played all of them. I haven't finished all of them. Paper Jam specifically is the one I never reached the credits of, but I wasn't reviewing that one, so I didn't need to. And it's an interesting series because the original trilogy is regarded very highly. That's Superstar Saga, Partners in Time, and Bowser's Inside Story, with specifically the first and the third one being the most beloved. And then Dream Team has its fans, but that's when it started to lose me a little bit. It got very, very chatty, and even more hand-holdy and tutorialized than the original 3 had been. And then Paper Jam just lost a lot of the personality and spirit that the Mario and Luigi series always had. And then that was it. There were a couple of 3DS remakes, but then the series was mostly gone. And as Nintendo moved away from handhelds dedicated and went more to the hybrid Nintendo Switch, I didn't know if we'd ever see Mario and Luigi again. So I was thrilled when this revival was announced in the June Nintendo Direct, and I kind of tried to keep my expectations a little bit lower because this is a new developer they handed this to. It took us a long time to find out that it was Acquire that was making this, and we didn't know exactly what to expect. And so I was just going in hoping for a Mario and Luigi more in line with the original 3 that I loved, instead of kind of the 2 that started to lose me a little bit. But instead what we got was neither of those things. Brothership exists entirely in its own plane because of just some of the wonky, weird decisions that it makes that are unlike anything the series has done before, and it has some of the problems that the past entries had as well.
I think just a lot of things went wrong in this development.
Yeah, and to be clear, I only think the gameplay is really good in combat. I think outside of combat, it's not very good. I think that the puzzles are pretty easy, and just the way Luigi...
Because of Luigi.
They do. When you're collecting the sprite bulbs to level up your battle plugs, and you have to pluck them from the wall and then chase them around to actually grab them, it's such a boring, unnecessary thing they make you do dozens and dozens of times
and
across
bizarrely,
this. It's not
so
good.
Many times before you even know why you're doing it.
Yes.
There was a
you're
long time
these.
I was like, why am I collecting these things? Somebody tell me.
It takes like 10 hours until Snoutlet actually tells you what they're for.
I know,
it's
so,
crazy.
The game is so disconnected, which is ironic because the whole game is about connections. It's clear you have a passion for the series and Nintendo in general. Like, I'm now taking a second to look around your room behind you here. It's clear why you're the resident Nintendo reviewer at IGN and an old CRT with a GameCube hooked up.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just playing Melee on it like last weekend. Yeah.
Oh my God. All right. We're about to be best friends. Do you think when someone sees a 5 out of 10 from IGN, it's an easy video or it's an easy comment or it's an easy something to get some attention on if they go after it?
I think that if you go back and look at past reviews from IGN, these comments have been around forever. When IGN gives a low score, it's just a fact of it. Yeah, and I think that's all I should say on that. I think that yeah, it's easy to see a low score, especially if it's more of an outlier score from IGN and comment on it. And then of course there's the memes about IGN's giving 7s, and sometimes it feels no matter what score IGN gives to something, there will be some people out there that aren't happy with it, and that's just the nature of it. Everyone's going to have a different opinion on a game.
You playing it, I'm guessing in advance, working on a review, putting it out there with a 5. Were you then surprised to not only see how many 9s, and someone even gave it a 10 it received, but on top of that, the reception to your review, like, did that shock you?
I have a lot to say about this one, if you'll bear with me.
Yeah.
So, first, I think it's really important to say that on the IGN scale, a 5 out of 10 does not mean bad. It means mediocre. A 4 out of 10 is what bad means. So it's
Endless
not
Ocean.
IGN. Yes, Endless Ocean was bad. This game I thought was mediocre. And everyone is entitled to their own opinion. I was personally surprised by some of the higher scores. It doesn't make them wrong. That's that reviewer's opinion, right? But yeah, I was surprised by some of the reception, and to see more 8s and 9s than what I kind of expected it to land around 7s for people. No, giving a game with Mario in it a 5, I had a feeling that there was going to be some backlash. It was a little bit worse than I expected, but no, I fully stand by the score, and I still believe it a couple months later.
I was going to ask, do you ever feel pressured when you're making a review based on like people's response? But it seems like no. It seems like you're just, your opinion's your opinion.
Don't.
Yeah, I'm definitely getting that vibe from you.
It was becoming abundantly clear that Logan was steadfast in his review of giving this game a 5 out of 10. And as we sat here for another half an hour, honestly just complaining about the game together.
Yeah, because I've seen a lot of people, one of the main criticisms to my review is, oh, I don't have any frame rate issues. And in handheld, it was better than when it was docked, for sure.
The top comments will always be, didn't happen to me, perfect for me. I somehow had 60 frames.
I myself became even more solidified in my own opinion that this game is just so painfully mid. I'm glad I took the time to actually talk to Logan about his review, because the backlash I saw online for him giving this game a deserved 5 was honestly insane. And I will say, Mario and Luigi Brothership might have missed the mark on making a game based on connections, but through making this review, I definitely made a connection of my own. Hopefully one day, I'll get to play Super Smash Bros. Melee on that CRT TV. Well, not that it was the point of my video to justify Logan's review, but I think it's clear that the guy is very passionate about Nintendo, the Mario and Luigi franchise, and is standing by his score. And I don't blame him. I don't want to try and have a larger conversation about this. I just want to talk about how mid Mario and Luigi is. But if I was to dabble in a larger conversation, I do wonder if sometimes we give Nintendo games too much of a pass just because we grew up with Mario. Like, there are so many fantastic RPGs that released this year alone. Incredible experiences that people legitimately haven't played, but they will be gravitated towards playing a Mario RPG because, well, I don't know what the heck Alive Alive is, or even if I'm saying that correctly, but I sure know Mario. And this is the RPG you choose to play, this bare bones, watered down, bland, cracker, saltine of an experience? And we want to give it a 9? How much did you like that pig? I'm gonna end this talking about the scores of the game again. If you really enjoyed the game, I'm sorry. Don't worry, you can let me know down below how you feel. I'm used to getting destroyed after reviewing a Nintendo game poorly. When I look at Mario and Luigi Brothership, I can't help but see a generic cookie cutter experience, which was the exact thing that plagued the series and sent the developer Alpha Dream into bankruptcy. The fact that Acquire clearly had a vision and a direction they wanted to go with this game, but were thwarted by Nintendo at every turn. So much so that it's really all they talked about in a very short interview that they did with and for Nintendo. I usually don't give video games a score ever. It's just not my thing, but I would probably have to slap it with a big old 5 out of 10 because this game couldn't be any more mid. The only thing I really hope comes out of this is now that Acquire has made the Mario and Luigi game that Nintendo wanted them to make, I hope they get one more shot to make the Mario and Luigi game that Acquire wanted to make.